Like it or not, it's time to say goodbye. And we're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 172 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
The season is upon us. We are getting into the holiday season. We are getting ready for Thanksgiving, or some people have already got their stuff up for Christmas.
Yes.
I walked out this morning. There was snow on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't happy about that. It's like, it's not time for Christmas yet. Let's get there.
Uh-huh.
But this has been an odd couple of weeks because a lot of things are coming to an end, and we're definitely going to talk about that. And unfortunately, that also means we're going to be doing an in memoriam, and this one's rough.
Yeah.
This is, to me, as difficult as Stan Lee, because this week we lost the voice of Batman this week. Kevin Conroy passed away.
My Batman, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people's Batman. Mm-hmm. I'm a Gen Xer, and I considered him my Batman. And I grew up with Adam West.
Yeah, that's the first Batman I saw, of course.
Yeah.
In syndication, obviously.
He was the Batman for multiple generations. Mm-hmm. And not just in the animated series, which that show itself, as far as Batman canon is concerned, the impact of that show cannot be underestimated. You have someone who was just the epitome of both Bruce Wayne and Batman. Being Batman in a show that introduced Harley Quinn, who basically rewrote the origin of Mr. Freeze.
Right, yep.
And made him a sympathetic character and a more interesting character.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And a lot of different things. He was the voice of Batman for that. He was the voice of Batman for Justice League.
Batman Beyond.
Yeah. He played that character in that aspect. Some of the one-shot DC animated movies, he came in and was Batman for that. He made a Batman movie, Mask of the Phantasm.
Yes, which is
one of the best Batman anything anywhere.
Yeah.
An incredible story. Mm-hmm. And he voiced Batman in video games as well.
Right, Arkham series.
Yeah, Arkham Asylum, yes. He was Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, he became that golden mean. Mm-hmm. And his work as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker, they were a force to be reckoned with. Seeing how Batman developed in those shows, he became a much, much deeper character. And in ways that a lot of the other forms, even in the comics, didn't do. I mean, the Batman, the animated series, was a renaissance for that character.
Yeah, it's Batman on TV has, of course, we know the comics inspire the TV shows, but the TV shows inspiring the comics just as much. With Adam West, I know that Catwoman was getting ready to, they were just going to write off that character. Yeah. And then they saw Julie Newmar in a tight skin suit, and then everyone loved her again. And then bringing Harley Quinn into the animated series, and then she became a character in the comic book. And so to be able to play off each other and realize how media in all forms will influence and make and create richer stories, because we have this half hour with commercials of a child show, and yet it is so deep and so profound. And that going back and watching it, and I feel just the same about it as I did when I was 8 years old. And
the thing about it, too, is Kevin Conroy, this was a complete shock. He basically died at 66 of cancer. He didn't really tell anybody about it. He didn't tell anyone. Right. He kept it to himself. And we all pretty much learned about the same time. And it was definitely hard because nobody expected it. Everybody now, as they're sharing their Kevin Conroy stories, and people are still talking about it. And it's very difficult to come to grips with it. We're all still in shock about it. And really, I don't know who is going to have as much effect on the character of Batman as Kevin Conroy. He basically took a character a lot of people understood but had forgotten about and made it his own. Even to the degree that later on, when the CW did their crossover, Kevin Conroy played an older Batman. And he actually physically played that character.
Yes.
So
see him in live.
Yeah.
And then hearing that voice and all the people who must not have known and then heard him and realized it, who had no idea what was going on, must have been just amazed.
He made such an indelible mark on the character of Batman. Definitely
30 years?
Yeah.
Yeah,
at least since the early 90s. So.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, let's see. Okay, Batman, because Danny Elfman inspired both those, the Burton film and the theme songs. So they went hand in hand.
Yeah.
So at least 1990.
Yeah, the Burton movie inspired them to do the TV show. And they did use Danny Elfman's theme for the opening. Although, and we've seen it so many times, you maybe forget this, there's not a title card in that opening scene at all. There's nothing that says Batman or the Batman. No. You just see Batman and you know.
His silhouette, and then the episode title pops up. That's all you get.
Yeah, you get the episode title after the
Grey Ghost. And
yeah. Which was a great episode.
It was.
Because you brought, again, it was like...
They created it. They created his sort of origin, his inspiration.
Yeah.
Like, he's afraid of bats, so he dressed up as a Batman. Well, that wasn't it. That wasn't the only thing.
And the great part about it is you have this older character that was an inspiration for Bruce Wayne, and who do they get to voice him? Adam West.
Adam West.
So you
Which
get
was
that.
many of our first Batman. Yeah.
So there was obviously a lot of love for that whole thing, and I love the Art Deco style of the show. It was original, and I'm definitely Kevin Conroy's voice work in that show. It is really what made that character a Batman, and it's why Kevin Conroy is going to be pretty much everyone's Batman for a long time. So certainly he is going to be missed. But speaking of people that we have lost because of cancer, I do want to talk about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, specifically because I took your advice. I got in the car and I drove to Columbus and saw it in IMAX 3D.
How was that just like what you would expect? Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it the underwater scenes that did it?
Partially, yes.
Okay. Wow. So even more than that.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
The fight scenes were great. A lot of the flight scenes, because, of course, you have Namor, but you also have Riri Williams as Ironheart in her big Iron Man-inspired flying suit.
Okay.
So you have that as well. I'm definitely going to avoid spoilers on this, so I'm going to talk about some things in general about the movie. And I have to say, first of all, is that I love the film. I know not everybody has. There are some people who absolutely hate this movie that they've not seen. It's like, all the stuff in that movie that I didn't see, I didn't like. But I think as a writer, I give the movie credit for a lot that maybe an average viewer might not. I don't want to fall into saying the cliche of, hey, well, it's not a perfect movie. I know a lot of people say that when they give a review because it's like they're about ready to say something nice about the movie, but they don't want to be thought of as a mark or a shill. So they're like, it's not a perfect movie, but I liked it. The thing about it is this movie was really tricky because it had to deal with some really harsh stuff because you are dealing with the fact that the main character of this franchise of movies is gone. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't about a contract negotiation. He actually died.
Yeah.
And this was a very, very tight-knit family on the first Black Panther. And now Chadwick Boseman's death weighs pretty heavy on this movie. There's no getting around it. And the fact that any movie would be able to navigate over something that heavy, I have to give it props for that. Because there are so many ways it could have gone wrong. Knowing that the audience is going to be walking in and knowing they're going to know that Chadwick Boseman is gone, which means that version of Black Panther, since they're not recasting it, which would have been it would have been a minefield of its own for a bunch of reasons. And a lot of reasons that we've talked about. But recasting that character would have been extremely difficult to do. I completely understand why a lot of people wanted to do that, but the fact they chose not to do this, how do you address that in the movie? And it took a deft touch to do that, and I feel like they were able to basically do that. At the same time, they were able to give you a lot of the stuff that you expect from a Marvel movie, and they were able to develop a storyline that some people said at 2 hours and 41 minutes was too long. I didn't feel that way. I wanted to live in this world for a while.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than the fact that The last time a Black Panther movie ended, it meant I didn't get to see a Black Panther anymore, at least in live action. And so I definitely wanted to spend a little more time in this movie. One of the big themes of it, obviously, is grief.
Right.
And how you deal with that grief. But it also is about what do you do afterwards. It would have been really easy for this movie to go off the rails. It had a very fine line to walk. How are you respectful toward Chadwick Boseman and what he did, but also not turn this into a 3-hour mope fest the whole time?
Yeah.
You still have to deliver a good story, and they did. And they were able to blend all of those themes in together.
Good.
And are there tears to be shed? Oh, yeah. And not just over Chadwick Boseman. There were some really interesting choices that were made. One thing that I didn't want to talk about, it's something I was thinking about because I felt like it was going to be a spoiler. If you hadn't thought about it, you were better off not going in and even thinking about it at all, I felt. But if the trailer was correct and we're getting a new Black Panther, what happens when you become a Black Panther? And you remember this from the old movie. You take the heart-shaped herb, which means that they would have to figure out some way of restoring the heart-shaped herb. So that has to become part of the story. But you take the heart-shaped herb and you go through a kind of death.
Right.
And then you go into...
Have your vision quest.
The land of the ancestors. You talk
sort
to
of your peyote and Sweat Lodge.
But the purpose of that is so that you can talk to the Black Panthers who were before you, right? So how do you deal with that? Because does that not mean that you're going to have a conversation with T'Challa? Doesn't that include that? That's going to be tricky, isn't it? Because either you are going to go there, and how does that work? This goes back to, I had discussed this briefly without any spoilers about Ghostbusters Afterlife, but you've seen it and I've seen it.
Yes.
And it's been a while, we can talk about it. The one thing that they did that could have gone completely south was they brought back Harold Ramis, Egon Spangler, who had been dead for years, and they brought him back as a ghost, which I felt like they handled it really well because it could have gone really bad.
Yeah.
And that was tricky. And so having to deal with the ancestors and going through that vision quest, how do you deal with it? And I'm not going to talk about how they did it because, again, that's a spoiler.
Okay.
But, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Okay.
Not only did they handle it, I feel, very well, but they introduced something that I didn't see coming, an aspect of it that I was like, okay, this is interesting. It really introduced something into the plot that I wasn't expecting.
Okay.
It deepened the plot in a way that I didn't see coming, and it made some characterization that I just assumed wasn't going to happen. In other words, something that I figured would just be a smooth transition into something became much more complicated. And all I can say is, holy cow, I did not see that coming. But Namor as a character isn't just a mustache-twirling villain.
Good.
And without any spoilers, what the hell, France?
Uh-oh.
What the hell, France? And that's all I'm going to say. But there was a lot of stuff in there for sure. Could they have cut some of the stuff out? Yeah. Do you have to put pepperoni on the pizza? No, you can eat it with just cheese if you like, but I wanted the supreme pizza. I wanted everything.
Okay.
And we got it.
All right.
All the rumors you heard about Angela Bassett were true. She acted her tail off in this movie.
Yeah.
She was incredible. People have said Oscar, and I get it.
Yeah, she's needed an Oscar since like 1992. So
yeah, what's love got to do with it? She got an Oscar nod, but she didn't win it.
Yeah,
and I can see this. I can absolutely see her getting an Oscar.
She and Leonardo DiCaprio just keep getting skipped over.
Yeah, she is a badass in this movie, and yes, she's going to make you cry, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay,
because that's a major spoiler.
All right.
Like I said, this movie had to deal with grief. It was basically forced into it, really, because of the choices that they made. But I feel like it handled it well.
Good.
I will also say that where a lot of people thought, hey, look, you really only have a couple of choices. You're either going to say T'Challa is dead, and that's it, or you're going to recast T'Challa, and I see the point of both of them. And the movie, again, without going into any spoilers, said, hey, wait a minute, what about this instead? Instead of those two choices, how about this one?
Coma. I don't know.
I
That's the soap opera
That's the soap opera
solution. The soap opera solution.
All I'm going to say is it's worth staying for the mid-credit scene to get the answer to that question.
All right. Okay.
And that's what I liked about the mid-credit scene, because the mid-credit scene is supposed to be a twist to develop a future property, and it didn't come off feeling that way in this one. It felt like in the spirit of the mid-credit scenes, yes, there was something you didn't expect, and yes, it does develop something in the future, but it was its own thing.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So I feel like the Love and Thunder credit scene.
It's a little bit different than that. I will definitely say it's different than that. But again, it basically takes this binary of, do you recast T'Challa or do you let him be dead? But there's something a little more nuanced that we can do besides those two really harsh choices that we have.
Okay.
There's something that's got a little bit more to it.
All right, that's very intriguing.
Yes, and be ready to cry then too.
Of course,
Because,
always.
Yeah, there's a lot of waterworks in this movie. I feel like this is a really good movie to end this phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it's a very solid entry. It gives you what you want from a Marvel film. It answers some really tough questions. It develops characters. It makes you go, what's next? And at the end of the movie, of course, you get Black Panther will return. So it doesn't say.
Oh,
it says
man.
Black Panther will return, and that's it. So we don't know yet.
Or in... Come on.
I will say there's some things that were introduced in Wakanda Forever that's certainly going to make ripples into the rest of the MCU. And, I mean, a bunch of different things. We'll just say that.
All right.
And we also know, of course, that Ironheart is going to be a Disney Plus series, and they've said that it's going to take place right after the events of Wakanda Forever.
Okay.
But I will definitely say about the movie, besides the fact that I love the heck out of it, people need to watch it, I will say that maybe more than a lot of Marvel films have been able to do, so many characters got their moments to shine. I think that's a real tribute to Chadwick Boseman. He wasn't just like a one-person deal in Black Panther. He had this great cast of people that worked with him. And a lot of them had their moments to basically step up to the front. And I know, of course, Chadwick Boseman would have loved that. But you get a lot of deepening of a lot of different characters. Even characters that you think you know very well, like Shuri. Holy cow.
Okay.
The stuff that she deals with in this movie, wow. Yeah. And not that this is much of a spoiler, but obviously over the course of the beginning when T'Challa dies, obviously she tries to save him and doesn't. And that's right at the beginning.
Yeah.
So you know that scene has to be there. Yeah. It's like if he's dying, obviously Shuri is going to be doing everything she can to save him.
Yep.
And failing to do that. That's
when people go crazy. That's villain origin right there.
I will just say that she goes through it. She goes through some stuff. And there's a great scene between her and Angela Bassett, the Queen, about a tradition of mourning in Wakanda that Shuri, she ain't having it because she's not ready to let go. That moment of accepting it. And it's a beautiful scene, but there's a lot of them in there. And it didn't hurt that there was all this great action that was happening in my lap. You know, on a huge screen and in 3D. Holy cow. The main disadvantage of seeing it that way is, it's going to be harder to see it in other formats. But the other thing that makes it very difficult is now that I have seen the Ant-Man Quantumania trailer.
Right.
On IMAX 3D.
Now
I'm probably got another trip to Columbus.
You're addicted.
Yeah, it's like, because that trailer was like, oh my God. You've seen the trailer, so you know how weird all of that looked. But then, holy cow, when you see it on a big screen in 3D.
Or you start a petition to get an IMAX built here in Charleston. We've got a mall that has nothing in it.
We are way overdue, and hopefully. But before we go, obviously, a lot of shows are coming to an end. We'd already talked about Interview with the Vampire. This weekend is supposed to be it's going to be the series finale for The Walking Dead.
Wow.
Because I have AMC Plus. I've seen it. and I have thoughts, and that's all I'm going to say, because obviously we need to wait. I want to wait until that's finished. We'll definitely have a lot to talk about, but again, other shows like Westworld, HBO Max, they had one last season for that, but HBO Max said, heck, we'll just cancel it anyway. So before they had their final season, it just got...
Oh, that is like early 2000s HBO, man. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like Deadwood and not Carnival and...
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah. It's like, especially when you know how good it is.
Yeah. Rome.
Yeah. That was painful. And now we have new things that are on their way. Well, definitely there'll be a lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, though, next week is Thanksgiving. And so I'm going to be busy in a turkey coma, as I'm sure you will, and all the Geek Watchers will.
That's what I plan
And so we are going to be taking a break for 1 week, but then we will be back the next week. And from there, we will definitely discuss The Walking Dead and whatever else happens. So with that said, we come to the end of episode 172. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be thankful for yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.